Hello, class. Thank you for joining me online today. Before we get into the lesson, I do want to just go over our agenda real quick so everybody is aware of what exactly we are going to be doing and in what order. So we are going to be starting Lord of the Flies soon, and Lord of the Flies is very big on imagery. We have talked about imagery in the past, but we're going to look at a more specific lesson today to kind of help you figure out where you're seeing imagery and how that actually affects what you're reading. So you should have all received in your email the Lord of the Flies imagery lesson. If you don't have that open already, please make sure that you open that now. And I'll give you guys a second to get there while I go to the next slide. So the first thing that we're actually going to do is review imagery, and we're going to talk about what it is. And then we're going to read the excerpt from Lord of the Flies together, and you're going to identify examples of imagery. And then we're going to move our lesson into the application aspect, where we talk about how imagery shifts the tone of a passage. So we're going to review all those things. I don't expect you to have everything memorized, but we're going to talk about each of them individually and make sure that we are all clear on what all those things mean. So before we get into actually reading, we're going to talk about what imagery is. Let me pull up my own version of the lesson. There we go. Okay, I see that we have an overachiever, Chris. We are getting a little bit ahead of ourselves, but that is okay. So, first, I want to ask everybody, what is imagery? If you want to unmute yourself to answer, please do so. Go ahead, Rachel. You can say all of them. Yep, good job. Sight, hearing, smell, taste, and touch. So Rachel hit all 5 of them, which is awesome. So these are all things that you can experience in our actual physical world. I actually don't like the way that looks like that, so we're going to keep it like that. So obviously things that you hear are things that you hear with your ears, so those are going to be sounds. Things that you see with your eyes, that's your vision. Smell, things that you smell in the air, any descriptions about what the air might smell like. Taste, that one's a little bit harder to kind of get in literature. It doesn't often come up, but if we're talking about something like an apple pie, we all know what apple pie tastes like. So bringing up food or things of that nature can often be considered a taste sensation. And then obviously touch, if something is rough or if something's sandy, which you might encounter in our excerpt today. Those would all be examples of imagery. So what I'm going to do, everybody has been assigned a color to highlight. And while I am reading through this passage, you are going to be responsible for highlighting at least 2 types of imagery that you see. There's only so many options, so please try to allow each other the opportunity to highlight your own things. Don't just go ahead and highlight everything that you possibly see. Share a little bit, and make sure that you're highlighting in your own color so that you can receive credit for the assignment. Are there any questions about what you're being asked to do? Okay, I'm seeing some head shakes, so that's good. Awesome. Cool. Alright, so this is the beginning of Lord of the Flies. It's not the direct beginning of the story, but it is very near the beginning where the boys are all meeting each other for the first time and trying to scramble together after crash landing on the beach. Signs of life were visible now on the beach. The sand, trembling beneath the heat haze, concealed many figures in its miles of length. Boys were making their way toward the platform through the hot, dumb sand. 3 small children, no older than Johnny, appeared from startlingly close at hand where they had been gorging fruit in the forest. A dark little boy, not much younger than Piggy, parted a tangle of undergrowth, walked onto the platform, and smiled cheerfully at everybody. More and more of them came. Taking their cue from the innocent Johnny, they sat down on the fallen palm trunks and waited. Ralph continued to blow short, penetrating blasts. Piggy moved among the crowd, asking names and frowning to remember them. The children gave him the same simple obedience that they had given to the men with megaphones. Some were naked and carrying their clothes, others half naked or more or less dressed in school uniforms, gray, blue, fawn, jacketed, or jersey. There were badges, mottos even, stripes of color in stockings and pullovers. Their heads clustered above the trunks in the green shade. Heads brown, fair black, chestnut, sandy mouse-colored. Heads muttering, whispering, heads full of eyes that watched Ralph and speculated. Something was being done. The children who came along the beach, singly or in twos, leapt into visibility when they crossed the line from heat haze to nearer sand. Here the eye was first attracted to a black, bat-like creature that danced on the sand, and only later perceived the body above it. The bat was the child's shadow, shrunk by the vertical sun to a patch between the hurrying feet. Even while he blew, Ralph noticed the last pair of bodies that reached the platform above a fluttering patch of black. The two boys, bullet-headed and with hair like tow, flung themselves down and lay grinning and panting at Ralph like dogs. They were twins, and the eye was shocked and incredulous at such cheery duplication. They breathed together, they grinned together, they were chunky and vital. They raised wet lips at Ralph, for they seemed provided with not quite enough skin, so that their profiles were blurred and their mouths pulled open. Piggy bent his flashing glasses to them and could be heard between the blasts, repeating their names. Sam, Eric. Sam, Eric. Then he got muddled. The twins shook their heads and pointed at each other, and the crowd laughed. At last, Ralph ceased to blow and stare, the conch trailing from one hand, his head bowed on his knees. As the echoes died away, so did the laughter, and there was silence. Alright, so, we're gonna go back real quick and just look at some of the things that everybody highlighted. If you didn't get your 2, while we're going over this, now would be the time to make sure that you are getting that, make sure that you are highlighting with your appropriate color. So, it looks like Chris highlighted the word trembling to describe the sand. Chris, which sensory thing does this go with? Like, which of the 5 different types of imagery? The trembling sand. It's all good? Oh no. There we go. Yes, good job. Alright, you can go back to being muted now. Alright, and then I believe yellow was Sam. So, Sam, what sensory, what part of sensory is haze going to be covering? I would agree. The haze is something that you see when the ground is super hot. Any of you who play soccer, which I know that some of you do, you know that when the turf is super hot, you can see the heat waves coming off of the turf. While that might be a touch thing that you can actually feel, that heat, so technically heat could be a part of your sensory words as well, the haze is something you actually see. So, good job. Rachel, it looks like you highlighted as the echoes died away, so did the laughter, and there was silence. Which sensory term are we touching on here? Very good. So we have lots of different sounds here. We have echoes, we have laughter, and we have silence. All 3 are covered here, which is an interesting combination because you wouldn't really see those things going together. Laughter does sometimes echo, but neither laughters or echoes ever kind of succeed in silence. So I like that you actually touched on that. And Jess, you picked a good one. Good job. We have smiled cheerfully and startlingly close, I think are both of yours. So, You can pick one of them, either one. Tell me which sensory word it goes with. Okay. Yeah, I think that that is actually a good point that both of those go with sight. If something is really close, we see it, and obviously we can see somebody smiling cheerfully. Um, one of the words that we did not touch on is taste, and I just want to draw your attention to one. So it talks about where the little boys had been gorging on fruit in the forest. While this is not necessarily a super specific sensory word or sensory phrase, we all kind of we can pick out a fruit and remember what a fruit tastes like. We know kind of what fruit would be like maybe on an island. Maybe they found a pineapple and they're gorging themselves on it, so you can kind of imagine the like the fruit juice going on their faces, or they're not being particularly clean, and not to mention these are little boys. Anybody who has been around little boys knows that they're not necessarily the cleanest human beings. So I think that you guys did a good job with that. So I want you guys to look at these different types of imagery, the way that imagery is used here. And then I want you to type in your boxes at the bottom of the page, how does the imagery shift the tone of the opening passage? And remember that tone is the voice that the author uses. So tone and mood often go together. But in this case, I'm asking you to tell me what you think the tone of the author is and how the imagery actually relates to that. So I'm going to give you guys about a minute and a half just to get some ideas down. Whoops. So just go ahead and get whatever you're thinking down. I would like it to be in full sentences, but that is okay if you just want to jot down notes. Totally fine. If you find yourself struggling, don't worry. Just do your best. This is not graded for accuracy. We are just trying to get down ideas and try to see where we are missing out on understanding. And it by no means has to be perfect.